Good morning. Good afternoon. As you can see, this sermon is entitled, I Am Not a Bookmark. I'm sure you all know what a bookmark is. Yeah. And, when preparing a sermon, especially when you're not used to preparing a sermon, it can be quite daunting. The amount of topics that are out there and variations on a topic, we're talking hundreds, thousands more, really. A topic from Jerry will be different from a topic from you, and from me. So I thought I'd do the simple thing and think about what I've been wrestling with lately, what's been coming to my mind, and I'd share it with you, and hopefully you will find something in it too. And honestly, lately I've been struck with the idea of how much I've been limiting God in my life. And that is not good. And it got me thinking that since I'm probably not the only person who's doing this, I'd share with you a few things that I've been learning and see how you feel about them too. In our house, I'm the person who takes care of the laundry. I wash, I fold, I iron as needed. I probably iron a little too much. But the thing I don't do is put the clothes away. I put my own clothes away. The job of the children and Jerry is to put their own clothes away. Now, on a good day, well, actually, most of the time it goes something like this. Kids, your clothes are ready, come put them away. A few hours later, kids, that sound about right? I'm sure some of you can resonate with that one. Now, on a good day, those clothes might end up in the bedrooms. On a very, and I mean really good day, those clothes might even end up in the drawers. What they look like in the drawers, however, it does make me think I should just do it all myself, right? But I won't. They've got to learn. And the truth is, I think about I argue with them, why do you leave a job half done? And then I have to think for myself, why do I leave so many jobs half done? Is it because I'm being distracted? Procrastination is an easy one to fall back on. Is it simply just that, or is there more to it? I get annoyed, I get upset, and I wonder how I can help them. But I'm starting to realize that a lot of things that I excuse with distraction and procrastination are actually about a mindset that I have that says thus far and no further. This is all there is. This is all I am capable of. I will bookmark myself right here. And then I decided to go a little crazy. And I thought, well, oh my, what if I'm doing that to God? So in Genesis, we learn the very first thing we learn about God. He is, right? In the beginning, God. He simply is. Always has been, always will be. But I love that next word. It challenges me. In the beginning, God created. He is creator. But have I been saying to him this far and no further? Have I been saying to him, this is all you're capable of in my life? Have I been bookmarking him right there? But he's the God who loves to build. And, when I think about it, when he sent his son to earth, he didn't send him to be the son of a shepherd, which would kind of make sense. He sent him to a carpenter, a creator. I don't want to think that I've put boundaries up that limit both me and him. Because he's the God who formed me in my mother's womb. And he's the God who's created me with purpose, for a purpose. Now, on another note, when you go online, you can find some great things. You can find some crazy things. And you can find some really interesting things. So I was just browsing about limiting behavior. And next slide, please. And I found this fantastic little, not there. I found this fantastic little article on Forbes magazine online. Now, there's 8 points to this and self-limiting behavior. It will come up. And I've taken them slightly with a pinch of salt because I think that anything we try to do of our own back is going to really be very difficult and somewhat doomed to failure. But anything that we do with God are more than capable of happening. It's not very big, so I'll read that to you. The first thing I came across, which really resonated with me, was something called below the line thinking. And remember, all these statements should have a little caveat saying, with God. Below the line thinking refers to a particular mindset that shapes how you view the world in a limiting way. It leads you to your believing that what's happening to you is outside of your control and everyone else is at fault. The economy, your industry, your boss, your spouse. Below the line thinking says, it's not fair what's happening, and I don't have what it takes to overcome these challenges. I didn't expect this, and I can't handle it. Above the line thinking, on the other hand, says, I can clearly see the obstacles ahead, and I'm addressing them with open eyes. I'm accountable for my life and my career, and I have what it takes to navigate through this successfully. If I fail, I'll still wake up tomorrow knowing exactly who I am and will have learned something critical. Now, each of these points, when I read them, not only I resonated with them, but they kind of made me think of a biblical character. There's a couple of points I'm going to read to you, and I'm going to tell you which character I thought of. I don't know which character this might jump out at you, but I really thought about Abraham, or rather, at this point, he was Abram. And he did have a particular habit of trusting too much in his own abilities and his own understanding and his own reasoning. I mean, he tricked the Pharaoh in Egypt. He told him, Sarah's not my wife. You know, it's all good. Why did he do that? Why do we do things like that if not because we're scared of there being a situation that we can't control? But oftentimes when we're scared of there being a situation we can't control, our fear creates the very situation that we can't control. But God is faithful. And he intervened. He saved the day. But ultimately, that was what I would call below the line thinking that got Abraham there. He didn't think that it was capable. But what I love is that God still uses Abraham, and we can't always see the obstacles ahead of us. There are things we can see, because don't be deluded into thinking that you can't reason, that you can't think. God has given you a brain. You are capable of seeing some of the obstacles ahead. When you plan a party, you have to think about, or a function, you're thinking about where you're going to hold it. You're thinking about how much food you're going to need. You're capable of seeing potential obstacles. What happens if it rains and we want a marquee because it's in the summer? We are capable of certain things in life. We can reason, but there will be obstacles that we cannot see, things that will jump at us at the last minute. But there is someone who can handle that. And we shouldn't be afraid of stepping forward if we're stepping forward with God. Abraham could have used many of his experience to say, okay, I'm done. I'm not doing anything. I'm staying right here because I know how rubbish my reasonings are. But he didn't. He carried on stepping forward with God. And I want to wake up every day. I want to wake up every day knowing exactly who I am because I'm walking with God. Go to the next slide, please. The next one is called Mistaking fantastical wishful thinking for action. It's a bit verbose. I'm particularly capable of this one myself. I don't know about you. My mind loves to imagine things that I'd love to be a reality, and then I forget about reality. What it says is successful professionals pursue outcomes that flow organically from their current actions. Unsuccessful individuals attach to fantasies that may relieve them momentarily of their situational pain, but have no basis in reality. For example, I've heard, the person who's writing this, I've heard from corporate professionals who share, Kathy, I really hate my job and I desperately want to leave. I've been wanting to write a book and become a motivational speaker for several years now. What's your advice? And I'll respond, okay, great. Are you writing and speaking? And more often than not, the answer will be, no. Well, you can't write a book if you're not writing anything. And you can't speak in public if you haven't developed any material to speak about. It's critical to take bold action towards your visions in order to create success. Now, successful people do develop huge goals too, but they crush them down into smaller, digestible, but courageous action steps that they then build on, which leads naturally to the end goal they're pursuing. There are so many Bible characters I could go to for this one, but I've chosen Joseph. Just like the story this morning, Joseph didn't go straight into a leadership role. He was given all the advantages as a child, but he didn't jump straight into anything. And that guy got torn down more times than I can count, and they were brutal. But each time, he not only stood up, he did his best in the little things. He did his best every step of the way until, it became second only to the Pharaoh. He succeeded, but he didn't have a clue that that's where he was going. He had dreams. He had a vision, what that vision was going to ultimately look like. He had to take each step. And I do believe that God gives visions. And I'm not just talking about, the E.G. White and John the Revelator kinds. I'm talking about personal visions, individual visions for you, for me. The annoying thing, yes, it's annoying, I admit it. He doesn't like to show us the end picture. And wouldn't we love to see the end picture if we are being led down a road? Wouldn't we love God to show us the big picture? But the truth is, he knows better than we do that we can't handle that. Do you notice sometimes when you know the big picture, you miss some of the steps thinking you can get there quicker? And actually you get there and you have no foundation because you haven't built your building blocks right. The foundation isn't there. I want to be like Joseph, and I want to take each step at a time. I want to do the right thing, and I want to do my best without knowing what the future holds. And I can only do that by trusting God's promise that he will be with us every step of the way. Next slide, please. This one is about remaining powerless and speechless. Now, that should be a fairly obvious one for Bible characters, but I'll read this out to you. Successful people are in touch with their power and are not afraid to use it and express it. They advocate and negotiate strongly for themselves and for others and for what they care about, and don't shy away from articulating just how they stand apart from the competition. They know how they contribute uniquely and the value they bring to the table. In addition, they don't wait to bring up concerns. They tackle challenges head on, speaking about them openly with calm, poise, and grace. They don't hide from their problems, and they don't perceive themselves as hapless victims. Can anyone guess who I'm going with on this one? Let's go with the speechless. Who didn't like to talk? Moses. And let's be honest, he started off a little hapless. And whether or not that was shyness or fear, God used him anyway. He let God use him in the little ways he could be used. And over time, and it was a long time, he became someone who was respected, who was listened to. When he talked, he had something to share. But like Moses, there is no overnight fix. That's something that they tell you in the movies maybe, but it's a time-consuming process, but worth it. God is investing in you, so we need to invest in ourselves. Which leads us to the next one. Putting off investing in themselves. I see this behavior over and over again in those who feel thwarted and unsuccessful. They are incredibly reluctant to invest time, money, and energy in themselves and for their own growth. They are comfortable only when putting other people's needs ahead of their own. They'll make any excuse for why now is not the time to invest in themselves or commit to change. They feel guilt, shame, and anxiety over claiming, I'm worth this. But successful people don't wait. They spend money, time, and effort on their own growth because they know, without a doubt, it will pay off for themselves and everyone around them. Sometimes we doubt God's leading in our lives. Oftentimes it conflicts with me time, with my time. Sometimes it conflicts with our bank account. But investing in ourselves, like I said, it's not an overnight thing. And there is someone who also knew this, and that is David. Like Joseph, David had been told, given an idea of what's to come. But actually, David knew considerably more than Joseph did. He knew he was going to become king. He was a young boy who knew that he would one day be the king of this country. And he didn't go out and declare it. He didn't go out and try to pull Saul down. He knew that he was destined to be the next king, but he took the steps that were necessary. And each step he took was where God led him. I love that story of his. Is on that journey to becoming king, so many things, again, knocked him. So many things challenged. But he trusted in God. He hid in caves. He pretended he was crazy. He did some interesting things. But ultimately, all of that was about trusting. All of that was following every broken up step of the way. And eventually, he became the man God created him to be, the man he was meant to be. David took his time. He proved his abilities over those years, 10 times over or more, until he became the person who stood at the top of their world. And we still say, what do we say about him? He is a man after God's own heart. We are worth it. I bet you if I asked you to write 5 things that you like about yourself and 5 things that you don't like about yourself, which list would get completed first? We're very, very critical of ourselves. Sometimes we have a right to be, but God sees things in us that we don't, and we need to ask him to show us those things and to give us that guidance. Next one. I'm not actually going to read this one because I felt it was really harsh, but I liked the concept, the resisting change. And this is an interesting one, and I think it can be considered the most scary, not just in our personal lives, but oftentimes in a church context. But the idea of growing and developing and changing, it's all about that creativeness, that creativity, the creation of what we are becoming, because we are not to stay in one place. And letting God create in you does require movement. But it is easier to not to question. Why do you do what you do? Why do I do what I do? Why do I think the way I think? It's easier not to question. Because boundaries that we set Boundaries are good. Boundaries are healthy. Never, ever think they're not. But boundaries can become boxes. And they can shut you off from the world. More importantly, they shut you off from God. And worse still, we can put God in one of those boxes. But I see God as someone who created this world. To me, he created the galaxy. He created the universe. I highly doubt that he has ever stopped creating. Isn't that why we celebrate the Sabbath? He is creator. In resisting change, it leads into this last statement. Honoring other people's priorities over their own. This is something we church members like to do. We like to be kind. So kind that I can take a step back, I can stop moving, I can encourage you, but stop letting God take over my life and limit myself and limit him. And this is something I'm realizing I do. It is nice to be kind. There is nothing wrong with being kind, but don't let the good things become the bad things. Successful people know what matters most to them. Their priorities, values, concerns, and their mission and purpose. They don't float aimlessly on a sea of possibility. They are masters of their own ship and know where they want to head. They make bold moves in the direction of their dreams. To do this, they are very clear about their top priorities in life and work, and won't be waylaid by the priorities and values of others. In short, they have very well-defined boundaries and know where they end and others begin. They say no to endeavors and behaviors and thinking that will push them off track. They know that they want to create what they want to create and the legacy they want to leave behind in this lifetime, and they honor that each day. Now, this doesn't mean that they're selfish and only think of themselves. It means they know specifically how they want to use their talents and passions in the world and commit to living out their visions. And very often, these visions are about being of service to others. If you are strong, you can be a support. Saul had a mission. It was a very bloody mission, but he had a mission. And his mission, actually, his sense of mission did not change when he became poor. The mission changed. Do you ever notice that as Saul, he was driven to serve God and only God? Should we serve God? Yes. When he became poor, he served God, but he also served the people. Something that seemed to be missing when he was Saul. I've met many people who have no clear understanding of what matters to them, and I have been one of those people. The problem is that sometimes we consider ourselves flexible, and then we become completely untethered, and we actually start to have no priorities. These can be people who like to help others, but end up losing themselves. I've also encountered the people in the churches who they have a mission, and they are certain about their priorities and the values they hold. They have a purpose, and that gives them a sense of value. And some of these people, you'll know these people. These are the people who you just get drawn to. The way they explain what God's doing in their lives and what he wants to do in the church. You're like, I'm on board. I'm there. I want to be there. I don't meet too many of them, unfortunately, if I'm honest. But when I do, I'm like, yay! Love to be one of them, but, I'm okay with who I am, I think. I'm learning. Unfortunately, some of these people do use their mission or hobby horse to as an excuse to stay exactly where I am with my boundary. You can't get in, neither can God. because that way the box is comfortable. I think Paul was an interesting choice for God because he rubbed some people up the wrong way. I wonder how he would manage in our church sometimes. But to his credit, he never stopped his journey with God. Like all these other successful people in the Bible, he carried on. He learnt. And the person you meet when he first converted is quite different to the person we read about in the last letters he writes. And that is a whole sermon on itself, and I'll let Joey take that one day. That there are so many tips on how to live successfully, but ultimately, it's the scriptures that give us the best guidance. It's good to remember that the characters we meet are not one-dimensional. And if we read the Bible with purpose, each character takes us on a journey of growth, of learning, realization, falling, picking themselves back up, sometimes not picking themselves back up. And we can learn from those people too. But for those who've chosen God, they pick themselves up, they grow, they learn, they carry on, and it's an adventure. Now, I am not meant to be a bookmark. And I hope you can say that too. I am not meant to be holding a spot in one particular place or book. I am a book. And I have a life to live. And I have so much more to be written in my book. And God is not a bookmark. He doesn't stay only where we are comfortable with him being. There is no box that could ever contain him. And his story, well, I'm planning on reading and experiencing his story for eternity. Will you join me?